Hello, this is David Scott Lynn, and I'm here to talk to you about biostructural yoga therapy. I'm assuming that you arrived at this presentation because you have an interest in yoga and maybe an interest in working with someone who knows a little bit about it. And so here I am, and what I'm going to do in this presentation is give you some general ideas of what yoga therapy is and what you can do with it, a little bit about how I work. I won't be teaching you yoga today, but I will be giving you some ideas of how to think about doing yoga. I'm going to focus mostly on the structural, postural, physical aspects because that's what most people are interested in and most people want. We will touch on the psycho-emotional and philosophical stuff some so you have a little better idea how I think about these things. Um, and so I'm recording this for the first time, and we'll see how it goes because I am very inexperienced at filming these videos. Okay, so advanced biostructural yoga therapy is something I developed over the years. I'll define biostructural in a moment. So we're offering private coaching either online or on phone. And I've got 45 years of therapeutic experience with yoga and body work therapeutics. And at the bottom of my graphic there, if you can see that, I hope you see on the left, you see the integration of the analytical mind, the acting body, the feeling viscera, the lungs and organs and heart and so forth, and all that's connected through the nerves and the polyvagal nerve system. And over on the right, we've got the bent man with the little pain points. Aging and injury just don't do it. And that's one of the things I've been very successful with is getting people out of pain who've been in pain for years and sometimes decades, literally 20, 30 years of pain. And I was the first person who was able to give them substantial relief and most of the time pretty close to complete relief. So the little guy on the right there, we're focusing on him when we're talking about resolving pain, posture, and pathology. And for the icon on the bottom left, we're focusing on psycho-emotional integration. Now, I'm going to move to the next slide here and find out what is biostructural yoga. For DSL Edgework, which is the overall name for my whole system of yoga bodywork therapeutics, the bio prefix is explained as number one, biologic or living. So there's a biological living system. And then bioenergetically, there's actually two B's. The bioenergetically, that's the interaction of mental, emotional, and physical aspects. There was, I assume they're still around, but there was something developed a few decades ago called bioenergetics, and that's what it was designed to do. Then we have the I for integral, all things working together at a deeper, more complete level. And then optimal organon. So basically, organon means a body of knowledge. So the optimal organon, two O's, is the body of knowledge that we use to achieve optimized results in biostructural balancing. Now, regarding the word structural down below, it talks about how in Orthodox medicine, structure usually means the bones and the joints, and that's basically it. Sometimes they include the ligaments. And this is kind of how most of modern medicine looks at structure. For example, one of the leading guys in the physical therapy realm who actually uh, did talk a lot about muscles in other contexts. His book on scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine, had like two paragraphs on muscles. Boop, and that was it. And people like me, uh, when we straighten scoliosis, we don't focus on moving the bones. We focus on releasing and relaxing and lengthening the muscles. Because when the muscle relaxes and lengthens, then the spine can go back to a normal alignment. So anyway, a woman named Ida P. Rolfe, who you may have heard of, she founded Rolfing or structural integration, And she was one of the people who helped popularize the inclusion of the muscles and the fascia and the tendons and the ligaments in the whole soft tissue picture integrated with the bones and the joints. So she was a big player in expanding the idea of what structure is. So the reason I use the term biostructural is just to emphasize that we are looking at the living, breathing, feeling, thinking human being who's running that structure, who's behind or in that structure, so that we realize it's not about moving the bones. It's not about straightening posture. It's addressing that living, breathing human being who's creating that negative posture, even if it was unintentional. Now we go to the definition of yoga. I'm not much into the whole Hindu, Eastern, esoteric practices. They have a different approach to spirituality than I'm interested in. My primary yoga teacher defines spirituality as the breaking down of boundaries between entities. And I'm more about the real world here in the now, and I live in the West. So I'm advocating for yoga for the West of us, that's us, and making yoga relevant for 21st century Americans in Western civilization. And contrary to Gandhi, the West does have a civilization. The problem is we kind of lost touch with it, and some of us are working to recover the good things of Western civilization. So I use two definitions of the word yoga. The first one is what Joel Kramer taught us was the quality of attention. Yoga is the quality of attention or mindfulness one pays to whatever they are doing in that moment. What we're talking about here is meditation. However, for me, mindfulness is a subset of meditation. That's something we get into in other videos. But it's all about attention, being in the moment, being aware of what is rather than thinking about what is or was, and worse, getting caught up in the thinking to the point that we lose touch with reality. So one of the things we want to do is bring ourselves back in touch with going on right now, and one of the best ways to do that is through getting your physical body on the program and get those synapses and nerve pathways from the thinking mind and the experiential consciousness integrating more thoroughly with the physical inputs from the physical body, and so we have a more integral human being in that state. The second definition of yoga is to bring two or more things or processes together to produce an integrated, synergistic whole unit or system. And down below, I forgot to put the asterisk there. It says a unit or unity is the state of being united or joined as a whole, integral, or synergistic system. I also just put in there, I'm talking about biostructural yoga here, but I also work with myostructural body work where we're focusing specifically on the stretches and the manual therapy to affect the or the neuromusculofascial system. So that's the more physical aspect of what we do. And so in myostructural yoga therapy and myostructural balancing, the myo refers to muscle, but more accurately, it's not just muscle cells. That when I say muscle by itself, I mean the neuromusculofascial unit. And I got a quote from one of my clients down there. She was a yoga teacher in Montreal, Quebec. She said, "You did for me in 4 hours what physiotherapy couldn't do in 4 years. And you gave me the tools to continue working on my own." I would say that's a pretty good thing to do, and that's what my main objective is to help people to get self-correcting and self-adjusting and self-healing as quickly as possible. Sometimes you need help for the more severe. Much of my practice in the treatment room was focused on people who were in pain for 20 or 30 years with very complex, obviously long-term chronic, if it's that many years, and difficult to treat situations. I had a number of people that have tried lots of different things, and I'm not the only therapist who can do this, don't get me wrong. But many of my clients have tried many different forms of therapy, neuromuscular therapy, myofascial release, rolfing, somatics, shiatsu, tuina, on down the line, and did not get the relief that they needed. Those other therapies are great. They help a lot of people with a lot of problems. I in no way am trying to replace them. What I'm saying is some people need a little different approach to get better, and I suggest that I may have the answer for that small percentage of people that does not respond well to those other therapies. So I'm not knocking those other therapies. I'm just saying sometimes other things work better, and hopefully I'm one of those things. Okay, 7 reasons to work with DSL and Let Go Yoga. DSL is my initials, David Scott Lynn, and Let Go Yoga is about letting go of tension, stress, and negative habit patterns. Now, letting go means like this. It's like if I'm clenching my fist tight, I'm letting go of that tension. And one of the misconceptions that some people have, especially when you're doing hands-on work on them, and you get in there and you find a knot, and the knot's real painful and stuff, and so you back off because you don't want to. I believe in no pain, more gain, but sometimes you stumble on these things. And so, for example, sometimes they'll say, "Get it out of there," as if that nodule or taut band in the muscle was a thing, and it was my job to dig it out. Well, the problem is those nodules and taut bands are not things, but they are as processes. They are something your sub or unconscious mind, and sometimes your non-conscious mind, is doing. And if you are doing something, the way to stop it is to stop doing what you were doing. So relaxation is not about learning some new relaxation technique, as in there's this other thing called relaxation to do. What you want to do is learn how to stop doing the tension. So you're letting go of the tension, stress, and negative habit patterns. And by the way, I don't have it in this presentation, but I work with what I call CEMNT, CEMNT. That's chronic excess muscle and nerve tension and stress. It's actually musculofascial nerve tension and stress. I believe that is a central cause of a multitude of problems in the human body. Almost all of my work for 44 years was about helping people learn how to feel, relax, release their chronic excess musculofascial nerve tension and stress, relieving their cement. And some clients, said, "Wow, my muscles do feel like cement," so it kind of fits. Going down here to the list of things that you can gain by doing biostructural yoga therapy, and any kind of yoga, does these things to various degrees. If you have a strictly physical pain or pathology, poor posture, injuries, yoga injuries, and so forth, I have a very good track record with that, and I do things a little differently than some people, and and uh, I'll talk about that in another video. If you don't have injuries, but you want to increase or boost your performance, say you're a golfer, you want better golf swing, if you're a musician and you want to play more precisely, if you want to lift your grandkids up easily, things like that. I've worked with polo players, martial artists, and so on and so forth. So improving your performance can be done by releasing excess tension in the musculofascial system. What a lot of people are told, a lot of their problems, especially bad posture, is that their muscles are too weak to hold them up or whatever. I find that it's not about being too weak, because usually what they do is if they think your muscles are too weak, then what do? they say, well, now we have to teach you some strength building exercise to get your muscles stronger. So, like if you're slouched forward, they want you to, exercise your back muscles because your back muscles have to pull you back up to be straight. That's logical, but it is generally incorrect. In 44 years, I don't think I ever once strengthened or exercised a person out of a problem with pain or posture or restricted movement. What I did is help them relax and release and balance muscles that were over-shortened or over-lengthened. And usually when you have an over-shortened muscle, the opposite muscle is over-lengthened. But the over-lengthened muscle is just as tight and sometimes tighter than the over-shortened muscle, which is paradoxical. But, I'll show you more about that if you look at any of my other videos, which I'll be putting up over the next several days and week. Um, so you want to be careful when somebody says you're too weak, because usually it's not because you're too weak, or it's because your muscles are too short. So it's not about muscles being weak or strong. It's about muscles being short or long. Okay, moving on. Elegant anti-aging, a term coined by Gerald Celente years ago. It's gracefully using preventive yoga to age gracefully. I'll just give you one idea there, and that is that the muscles in a normal state are filled with water. Water is a major factor in maintaining the size and shape of the muscle. Water is what transmits the power of the muscle cells, the contractile muscle cells, to the fascial sheaths, which become the tendons, which move the bones. If the water inside the muscle starts to decrease, then there's less of a medium by which the action of the muscle cells shortening. That force can't get transferred to the tendons and the bones if there's not enough water in the muscle. Also, things like loose skin and so forth are because there's not enough water in the area. And the thing is, people say, "Oh, I got to get rid of that water weight." Well, you want water in the right places. You don't want water in the wrong places. But here's the thing: when it comes to the muscles, the musculofascial or the neuromusculofascial units, it does not matter how much water you drink. If the muscle is chronically tense, meaning it's overly tight for long periods of time, what happens is the pressure inside the muscle is increased, and that pressure causes the water inside the muscle cells and inside the fascial sheaths to start migrating out of the muscle and goes other places. And there's debate about what it does in those other places. Some people, that in itself causes pain. I don't know. I've been looking for the research on that. But the point is this: if you don't have a relaxed muscle, the water cannot get back into the muscle. If you got a tense muscle, it's preventing the water from absorbing. So that's one element of anti-aging, is keeping the muscles relaxed and lengthened and soft so that the water can get back into the muscle. That's just one factor in the elegant aging idea. Okay, most of my practice has been about physical problems. That most people, I tried to get more into the psycho-emotional end of it many years ago, but I kept getting pulled back into the pain and posture and dysfunction, because while living in Chicago, most people were more interested in that than they were in psycho-emotional integration, all that, even though I was into it. But anyway, so you can, though, with practicing yoga, and sometimes if you're just practicing physical yoga mindfully, you will get psycho-emotional growth or psycho-emotional integration without even without even focusing on it. There's an excellent book by Carol Horton titled Yoga PhD, and she has a section in that book about the psycho-emotional aspects and how her whole personhood started changing from doing yoga, even though she wasn't doing anything to intentionally change her psycho-emotional state. And she does a very good job of explaining that. But it can happen spontaneously. Now, if you put some intention behind it, like if you start doing Hakomi body-centered psychotherapy in coordination with yoga and body work, you can get more things going on there, more direct, intentional movement in that way. Um, I do not push the psycho-emotional stuff on people. If they are interested and want it, I can work with them on that. I'm not a psychotherapist. I rely more on their own internal sensibilities. I just help them keep in touch with what's going on and answer questions from my point of view. And I'm educating about that, not presenting myself as a psychotherapist at all. Although I've had a number of people over the years tell me, "Wow, this is better than going to psychotherapy because the problems were really more in the psychomuscular system, not just in the psychological system, like PTSD, uh, post-traumatic stress disorder. Like if you're, like a lot of servicemen, come back from war and they have PTSD and they're all like stressed out and they get mean, they this, and the surface behavior is looks more psycho-emotional. But part of the problem is releasing that psycho-emotional stuff isn't very easy if you got the residue of physical experiences trapping your mind. So if a soldier was in a Jeep and they ran over an IED, an explosive device, and it blew them up, and he survived, yeah, there's an emotional reaction to that, but there was a physical reaction that was associated with the psychological action. And if you don't release the physical component of it, it's very difficult to release the psycho-emotional component. So, for those of you, if you're a therapist watching this, PTSD is an area that we really need to be looking into more. And if you have like a Veterans Administration in your local area or whatever, you might go to them and start talking to them about working with soldiers. Even if you can't get paid for it, you might be able to get a reputation such that people will support you in other ways. Okay, so another thing you can do with structural yoga therapy coaching is you can level up your yoga practice. I can write online, I can show you my tips and tricks and my little processes that I learned from Joel Kramer and other things to accelerate the effectiveness of doing physical yoga. And whenever I say physical yoga, I really mean physical mental yoga. I'm just kind of using shorthand there, short words, something like that. Um, then, so you can level up your yoga practice, maybe even become a teacher by working with me for some sessions. Um, and if you are, say, a psychotherapist or a doctor or a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, any other kind of therapy, and you start to realize, maybe people's physical issues have something to do with what I'm doing or not doing. Maybe you need more information or want more information about that, and that's something I can help you look into. Um, and then finally, I have the last thing here. If you're very interested in the sciences behind the psychoneuromusculofacial system, I am your guy. I know more about this than most people. I'm told I know more about this than most people in the country. And what's interesting is the sciences behind yoga and bodywork are almost identical. And there's a tremendous amount of overlap. So that's something that you might want to think about if you're interested in those sciences. There's another quotation here from Leslie Hunter. She was a teacher and student in Sedona, Arizona, where I lived for 4 years recently, and I lived for 2 years in the early 2000s. She said, "These teachings will take yoga to new heights in the Western world. The DSL method makes profound sense." DSL, again, that's my initials, David Scotland, and the dynamics of structural learning. But taking yoga to new heights in the Western world sounds like a good idea to me. Working on it. All right. Some fundamentals of Let Go Yoga. Some of the things that I work with in the process of teaching yoga and doing yoga coaching and so forth. Um, At the purely superficial level, you can get stronger and more flexible by letting go of tension, stress, and habit patterns. A lot of people who think they need to strengthen their muscles by exercising them with tension building exercise don't realize that their muscles feel weak because the muscle cells have overshortened and can't shorten anymore. The normal muscle cells, the actin myosin units in the muscle cell, are normally in a balanced state. They can go from here to here and back to neutral. There's neutral, that's stretched, that's contracted. And you can do it in degrees. But the thing is that each muscle cell is either on or it's off. If you get enough muscle cells in one area of the muscle over shortened, more and more of them shortened, they start bunching up. And so the muscle can't shorten anymore. You might have the fundamental strength, you might have the fundamental power, but if the muscle cell can't shorten anymore, it can't do anything. So a lot of weakness is from that. Or the muscle's overstretched and there are little like ratchets, and that's how a muscle cell shortens. These little ratchets there, the actin myosin units, called cross bridges, doing that action to shorten the muscle fiber. But if it's overstretched, when this when this one starts activating, cross bridge starts activating, it can't grab onto the other thing. It's actually these are the actin, these are the myosin. So if it's out there, you can't generate any force. So you want your muscle cells to be in the neutral state most of the time, in the balanced state. That's why we call it biostructural balancing when we get into the actual process of figuring out what to do with a client. We're balancing the muscles by either relaxing and lengthening the short muscles. We do not focus on strengthening and shortening the long muscles for reasons I'll talk about at another point in time. But the person's already too tight. They don't need to tighten up anymore. You want them to go as much into 100% relaxation as possible until they're substantially balanced and relaxed and have let go much of their tension. Now, I actually prefer talking to groups live because I can find out, did anything I just say make sense? I could say, did that make sense? And then you could say, no, say it again, please. Or, yeah, it did, move on. Okay, so I'm moving on because I can't hear your thinking. So anyway, some of the things I do that are a little different. A lot of people think they have to warm up to do yoga, or they feel like it, or they can get deeper into the posture if they warm up first. Well, we have a little different take on it. We don't warm up in the usual way. And in fact, from my point of view, given the purpose that I have for doing physical mental yoga, is you don't want to be warmed up. Because one of the things physical yoga gives you is the opportunity to experience your body as it is in its more day-to-day, normal, or typical state, so that you can work with that state of tension levels and so forth, and experience them in a way that you start to get control over them. But if you warm the muscles up kind of artificially, bouncing around, doing this, take a sauna, all that, and loosen everything up first, and then do your yoga, then you lose the opportunity to experience your psychomusculofascial tension or psychoneuromusculofascial tension as it is in the moment most of the time. And let's face it, you're not doing yoga 24 hours a day. You're going to do it 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour a day, or every other day, whatever. So we want the yoga itself to be its own warm-up. In other words, if you're too stiff to go into the yoga posture and you think you need to warm it up to get into it, I think you need to look at it from a little different point of view, and I explain that in more detail elsewhere. Organic asana rather than just go through a standard routine of cobra, plow, this, that, and thing, what we do is we take a look at your body's configuration that day and see what it's doing and what muscles are overshortened, which bones are out of alignment, so forth, and that tells us which muscles need the most focus. And so we create the asana for the day organically by tailoring it to what your situation is that day. Now, some people, we figure that out once, and their conditioned muscular system is so, like wired in that it takes weeks or months to really get it fully normalized. So this doesn't necessarily change every day. But whenever they come in for a session, we do the posture evaluation, structural evaluation, we check, we design the therapy session that day in that moment. Whereas, for example, in golfing, you go to the 10 session recipe, and for the 10 sessions, they do pretty much the same thing on everybody. We don't do that. We have each session designed for the person and place, whether we're using the yoga therapy or the hands on work or both. And that's really what really produces the results, is working on the people manually with your hands while they're in the stretch. And that's where my edge touch asana assist comes in, where you're working with the muscle with your hands as the therapist on the muscles that the client's focusing on in that particular posture or stretch. Channeling lines of energy. Lines of energy are how we activate uh, the uh, the limbs and segments of the body so that we stretch the nerves and decompress the joints and nerves. That's what's going on. And the trick with lines of energy is you lengthen into the stretch before you bend. You don't just go into the stretch. You don't just go into the stretch. What you do is you go up and then over just a little bit. Then you go up, inhale, go up and lengthen. And then on the exhale, go just a little bit. Just take up a little slack. Do not go up to any pain, no strong sensations, just mild sensations or no sensation. As long as the body part is bending, the muscle is stretching. You just may not feel it yet. A lot of people are desensitized, and so one of the things yoga and bodywork do is resensitize the system. As I said earlier, we build strength by creating length and balancing the muscles. It's not weak or strong muscles, it's short or long muscles that are the problem or the situation. We talk about using the breath to dissolve the mind. When I say dissolve the mind, I don't mean making it go away. What I mean is like when you have a glass of water and you put some vitamin C powder into the water, the vitamin C powder dissolves into the water so it spreads through and fills the whole area of water. So dissolving doesn't mean gone. It means evenly distributed through the medium, and the medium is the water. Well, what we're doing is talking about how we use the breath to bring the mind down into the musculofascial units, to the nerves, muscles, and fascial units, so that your mind dissolves into the nerves, muscles, and fascia. And that, by definition, if you're focusing and paying attention, your thinking process will start to dissolve, or now it might go away for a while. That's that may not be, because what you start to see and learn is that thinking actually takes you away from the current experience. That should be pretty obvious to a lot of people. So we're dissolving or moving the mind into the musculature such that the distinctions between the mind and the muscles, or the mind and the body, dissolve or disappear, so that all you have is a body mind, not a body that carries around a mind, or a mind being carried around by the body. Finally, we work with no pain, more gain. That's playing your edges of pain, fear, and resistance. And we have minimum edges and maximum edges. Most people need to be somewhere in the middle, and they're moderate edges. If you're severely injured, you want to have a minimum amount of sensation in your stretch. Even if you can barely move into it, you go to the minimum edges because the more traumatized the person is, they need minimal risk of triggering old stuff. Now, when you're super healthy, everything's going good, you can go to the maximum edges, the maximum levels of sensation before pain. It's not what you can tolerate. You want to be inviting the sensations, not fighting the sensations. Okay, hopefully that gave you a little idea of what I do. And here's Diane T. Kirikos, a Kripalu yoga and Pilates instructor. She was also up in the Northeast near Boston. David's work is amazing. David's knowledge is extraordinary. Now, 12 months later, I seldom feel pain and move with ease, freedom, and flexibility, moving in ways I never imagined were possible a year ago. David's techniques work. Now, I did not work on her for 12 months. I worked on her several times over a period of weeks or a few months, if I recall properly. But she did what I suggested, especially stop tucking her pelvis, because one of the things that is really dangerous in yoga, tai chi, ballet, and some of the Pilates is they tuck the pelvis under to flatten the lower back, claiming this protects the spine, and so on and so forth. I have a little video, just like a 1 minute video on my YouTube channel. It's about don't get stuck with a pelvic tuck. And it shows how tucking the pelvis actually compresses the discs of the lumbar spine. Okay, next slide. Why and how I can help you. My story quickly. I started in Zen style meditation when I was 13 years old in martial arts. I got into martial arts because I was kind of a wimpy kid, and my process over several months of getting better at doing martial arts. One night, I was in the ring fighting with a client or a student, one of my classmates, and I noticed I was doing way better than usual all of a sudden. And I'm doing better and doing better, then I noticed I was doing better, and as soon as I started to notice I was doing better, I started doing worser. And I backed out of the ring, regrouped, and went back in. Fortunately, that happened a few more times that night. And when it was all over, I was kind of mystified because I realized, it looks like when I'm thinking about what I'm doing, it doesn't work as well, which confused me because my dad used to say, if I screwed something up, Dad would say, David, you're not thinking about what you're doing. Well, he was kind of a natural meditator, and I don't think he ever really thought much about what he was doing because he just naturally did it. So I think when he was saying you're not thinking about what you're doing, he was really saying you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And he had not really made the distinction at that time about the difference between thinking and experiencing. But I figured I learned it, and my mom bought a book on karate for me right about the same time. And in that book, it said that it described that experience, called it meditation. I said, oh, wow, that's what happened to me that night. Meditation, wow. And so I went down to the library, Dalton Library, south suburbs of Chicago, looking for a book on meditation. Not a thing. But I remember the book that I did read on karate said that the Zen meditation came from Buddhism. So I went to the religion section and I found a book on Buddhism, the Dhammapada, which is supposedly the Bible that teaches the words of the Buddha. And it had some meditations to do. So I just started doing those meditations at 13 years old, which is basically start out just focusing on the surface of your body, different places, and just experience yourself. So I learned how I started doing that and started making changes. And so, as you see, I started integrating meditation into all the different aspects of my life. I integrated, so I didn't know it, I didn't call it yoga yet, but I was integrating meditation into my life. At 14, I got into racing motocross. I had many spectacular crashes. That was over 4 years, weekends. And so I had a lot of neuromuscular issues from that. neuromuscular fascial. I also survived structural steel ironworker. That's one of the heaviest constructions there is. It's very high stress, and you're in contorted positions much of the time. I was an ironworker foreman. I did that for a number of years. I fell once about 10, 12 feet and landed on the side of my head and neck over on this side. And that traumatized my neck for years after that. But I was applying meditation to racing motocross, to ironworking. But what's important about the word structural is that I went from being a structural steel ironworker earlier in life to becoming a biostructural yoga and bodywork therapist later in life. And much of what I learned in putting up steel buildings applied directly to learning how to evaluate the structure and posture of a human body. Then it's a long story. I won't tell you too much about it, but I was in a training program where I actually learned the last missing piece of my yoga bodywork system that I was developing. Uh, but I ended up they were working the wrong muscles in my body, and it triggered some problems. And I was in 3.5 years of severe throw me on the floor several times a week back pain. Spent sometimes a day a week rolling around on the floor trying to relieve the pain. And ironically, even though I had been a yoga teacher since 1967, or 76 rather, and I had been doing yoga back in those days 4 hours a day. It's my personal practice. And I knew how to do yoga. Yoga worked. It helped get rid of my earlier aches and pains. But this, every time I did the yoga, it paralyzed me. So I was mystified. I wasn't doing yoga. I was going to everybody in Chicago I could find to see if they could help me. Nobody could help me. So I've been there. I know what it's like. But I also uh, figured that, well, if no one else could fix me, I had to. So I did. And it was when I started applying my biostructural insights to my yoga practice, excuse me, more precisely, that's when I started getting better. And and I've spent many months at a time over many years doing as much as 3, sometimes 4 hour yoga sessions, sometimes almost daily. Uh, but in this particular time, when I was in pain here, when I finally figured out with one of my biostructural insights what I needed to do, I started religiously doing 3 hour yoga sessions 5 or 6 days a week with a very asymmetrically designed postural routine. I don't like the word routine, but it was something I developed the process of what I needed to go through. So I was doing that 5 to 6 days a week, mostly 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, and I did it for about 3.5 months before I had my first pain-free few hours. And so I knew when that happened, I knew I was on to something with my system of body work and yoga therapy. And I ended up with about 90% recovery just from using yoga. So even though I mostly have done hands-on body work with most of my clients, the yoga stuff can work really, really well, and it has worked well for a number of my clients. But I was the test case, unfortunately. Now, again, how I can help you, but what's my expertise? As I said, I started teaching yoga in 1976. I was trained by a guy named Joel Kramer, who was a master at yoga. He's the one who I got the definition of spirituality and the definition of yoga. Yoga being the quality of attention you pay to whatever you're doing, spirituality being the breaking down of boundaries between people, plus a number of innovations he developed in the practice of doing physical yoga. I became a massage therapist in '81, became a structural body worker in 1982, which is when I took the training program by a guy named Daniel Blake. He had been trained by Ida Rolf, kicked out of the Rolf Institute by Ida Rolf because he started disagreeing with some of her principles. I agreed with his disagreements that he had with her, so I took his program instead of going to Boulder to become a Rolfer. His method of posture evaluation, which is still what I use today, it's relatively simple, but there's a lot of nuances to it, and I teach it in my programs, both in the for yoga analysis and for bodywork analysis. and that's how we decide which muscles to work on and when. And if you get the sequence, for some people it doesn't matter, but for the severe problems that people are really in trouble, if you work their muscles out of proper sequence, they can get worse, sometimes a lot worse. I was one of them. Anyway, from taking his training program, I decoded the nature of posture and pain and what its root causes were. I've helped many clients over 44 years. It's been almost my sole income for 44 years. And during the 90s, I traveled around the country training therapists, and I got very high remarks. And you can find some of those testimonials on my websites, or a bunch of testimonials. But here's another one from another yoga teacher who was living in Rockport. She had been a Phoenix Rising yoga therapist. And she said, while DSL's concept and execution of bodywork is nothing short of amazing, it is his approach to yoga that has been life altering for me. The profound yet subtle changes have reinvented not only my own practice, but the way I teach yoga as well. Of all the yoga techniques I've studied in the past 30 years, not only are David's methods what I've been searching for, but for the feedback from students is equally as positive, which is really what that's where the real action is how are the students of hers and how are the clients of the therapists I've trained, how are they responding to the work? And she ended by saying, I'm excited about teaching yoga again. And that's why she's a former Phoenix Rising yoga therapist, is because she's switched over to using more mind methods. Now, for those of you who are more into the philosophical, emotional, psycho-emotional integration, so forth, notice in the center here I have this icon, and what this represents is that in our approach to yoga, we don't make thought to be the bad guy. We do try to put thought in its place. We try to learn that in many cases thought is inappropriate, or thought takes over, thought blocks us from experiencing current reality. But rather than try to get rid of thought, what we do is we try to experience thought in a new way. We pay attention to our thinking processes rather than try to make it go away. But if you think about it, if you're paying attention in the moment to your thinking, you're by definition getting more in the moment, and thinking spontaneously starts to reduce by itself when you do that. That's just something to think about when you're thinking about not thinking. And we can talk about that more if you get into a coaching session with me, or if you, I will be shooting some videos on these things. Okay, so there's the analytical mind in your meditation, which your consciousness, your meditative consciousness is the bigger sphere. The thinking mind is a smaller sphere. Notice the triangle and the square and the circle. I think that's the astrological. What symbol is that? It's supposed to represent, linear thinking, but that operates in a bigger field of consciousness. So consciousness is not thinking. Thinking is not consciousness. But thinking is a tool of consciousness, and it operates in the field of consciousness. So we've got and then the physical body, you're doing your physical postures with an analytical mind and meditative mind going on, and what happens is the analytical mind starts to dissolve and soften and reduce its tendency to interfere with what you're feeling and doing. Now, in between the mind and the muscular, this is actually the neuromuscular system doing the actions of the body, you have the viscera in between the lungs, the heart, the microbiome, and so forth. And everything is connected with the nerves and the polyvagal system. So one of the things we're doing by the act of focusing our thinking and experiential mind, our meditative mind, on the physical actions of the body, everything else starts to normalize, because one of the things about attention and awareness is if you're really paying attention to the muscles, there's a neurological thing that happens that they've found if that by itself actually starts to relax the nerves and muscles in that pathway. So you don't have to actually uh, figure out what you're messed up about. You just have to get better at paying attention. Now, I'm not saying that's always true, but there was a Dr. Sarno who is famous for writing books like Healing Back Pain and Mind Over Back Pain and The Divided Mind. And uh, he he has had a reputation. He's passed away now. He had a reputation for getting people with the severe pain out of pain without any physical processes at all, only by helping them reconnect with um, their emotional states of anger, rage, and guilt, and so forth. And he believed that if people got in touch with those sensations, those feelings, those emotional feelings, that much of their muscular pain or tension and therefore pain would go away. And he had a very good track record for certain populations of that being successful. But here's how he figured it out, how he got into it. He was teaching at the Rusk, Dean Rusk Hospital in New York, which was originally set up to be a more of a mind body holistic health place, but when Dean Rusk died, it kind of fell out to the wayside. But somebody had told Dr. Sarno, well, Sarno had a history of headaches, migraine headaches, where you get the lights and the flashing and all this stuff. And he was talking to one of the doctors about that, and the doctor said to him, well, next time you feel those headaches coming on, what you want to do is start focusing and finding out what you're angry about. So Sarno kind of like, well, listen, okay. And so the next time the headaches started, the lights tend to come before the headache starts. He went, sat down somewhere, and tried to figure out what he was angry about. So he just kind of was just paying attention, trying to look and see, well, what am I angry about? Well, what's interesting is he never figured out what he was angry about. But the headaches went away and never came back. To me, the lesson there, and I have a big long article on davidscottlynn.com on this about his method. What I think the lesson there is, it's paying attention in the moment that dissolves things, not necessarily going back and rehashing them in the past or thinking about the past. I'm not saying that doesn't work. I'm not saying it should never be done. I'm not saying that what I'm telling you always works or it doesn't work easily. But the act of paying attention can resolve a lot of the soft tissue issues we have because of the emotional stress that can cause a muscle to tighten up. So in our system here, we've got this integrative thing, feeling, sensing, integration. We talk about meditation, mindfulness. Here's the meditating guy. Here's the thinking guy. We're not trying to kill this guy. We just want him to have a little less say in the matter and let this guy have a little more say in the matter, because the present moment is where your life happens. If you're in thought, you're not thinking about the present, you're thinking in the present. But if you've ever been in a seminar or been watching something on TV and they say something, you're listening to somebody talk and they say something and you start to think about what they say, and then a minute or more later you notice, oh, I think they just said something important, but what was it? What did they say? I didn't hear it because I was thinking. So part of the trick is when you're listening to people talk, you listen to people talk, which is not thinking, it's perceiving. There's a big difference. Finally, over here, the integral whole human. This is from Ken Wilber's Integral Theory. We can pump that up a little bit, I think. And Ken Wilber's Integral Theory and the A-Qual method, the all quadrant, all lines. That's too much for us to get into right now, but he basically has these 4 elements. There's the internal me, the external we, there's the internal physical me, my body, and then there's the social world that we all exist in. And what I did is I added in the site, over here on this side of the scale, you got the psycho-emotional self. Then between the physical body and the mental mind, you got the biochemical self. Then your physical body interacts with your social world through your biostructural, your neuromusculofacial system. And then over here, between we and our social world, you have socioeconomics. And physical mental yoga, relational social yoga, and that's what we're dealing with. Down here I have my formula: emotional intelligence plus intelligence quotient, IQ, you've probably heard of that, plus AI, that's the new system that everybody's worried about. I prefer that rather than call it artificial intelligence, I want to call it augmented intelligence, because I've been finding and using AI that it's helping me do a lot of things and is actually helping me think deeper about a lot of things. I was already a pretty deep thinker, but this tool, knowing so as much as it does and how quickly it can generate responses, is unbelievable. So for me, combining the EI and the IQ and the AI is all convalescing in this stage of humanity to HIQ, which is human intelligence quotient. So to me, what we're doing is advancing the overall beingness of being human by integrating our emotional intelligence and our internal and our intelligence quotient. But I think that AI is going to help us go to the next level with all of that, because it does a lot of the grunt work for us if it's programmed properly. And one of the things I'm working on is for us to learn how to program AI properly so that it maintains being our partner rather than being something that's dangerous to us. Finally, how do I work? You can book a free call at members@davidscottlin.com, members.davidscottlin.com. That will take you to my new site that's specifically for my training programs. And click on the button in the top right corner of the header. It's a white button that says get in touch with DSL. That'll take you to an email page. And then we will book a call. When we book that call, we'll chat for around 15, 30 minutes, whatever. I won't be too strict about time. And what you're going to do is you tell me what your needs are, what you want to accomplish, and we'll see if we click, and if I think I can help you, we can move ahead. And if you think I can help you, then you can schedule a paid session. When you pay the fee, that locks in your spot. And if it's working and you want to keep going, you can buy single sessions, or right now you can pay for a block of 5 sessions and get one free. I'm also going to add that you can buy 10 sessions and get 12 free. Actually, it'll be a little better deal than that, because I want it to be a better price than doing this. So anyway, back to the beginning. Advanced biostructural yoga therapy, private coaching, online or on phone. I've got 45 years of therapeutic experience and 57 years when I started doing Zen style meditation. So if I can be of any help to you, check out that link at the top of the page for members at Davidscottlin. Don't forget the dot, members.davidscottlin.com. Okay, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening. It was almost exactly an hour, and I appreciate your time and attention. And please come back to my websites and take a look. I have two, davidscottlin.com, and which was a lot of information there. Members.davidscottlin.com is more focused on what you need to know and how to get interested in my training programs if you want to do so. Thank you very much, and have a great day.